President Joe Biden's news conference this past week has been an absolute treasure trove of psychological information and insight. However, in today's video, I'm going to show you yet another slip up, another goof the man made that nobody in the mainstream media has caught. No one has reported on this, but you're going to hear it here today. Now, it's two subjects that you wouldn't necessarily think were connected, but they are. That's why I have the image of the crystal ball on the left. He was asked about his plans for re-election, and he made some offhand comment, and we'll get the exact quote a little bit later, about not being able to plan or see 3.5 years or 4 years into the future, a big respecter of fate, I believe is what he said. Now, why is that important? This is a quote from President Joe Biden on China and the future of America. You ready for this? The future lies in who can, in fact, own the future as it relates to technology, quantum computing, a whole range of things, including in medical fields. And so what I'm going to do, Joe Biden speaking here, is make sure we invest closer to 2%. Now, what he's referring to is the paragraph above where he talks about back in the 60s, the U.S. used to invest a little over 2% of GDP in research, and now it's down to 0.7. Now, the next part, one of the reasons why President Joe Biden set up the PCAST, the President's Board with scientists and the like, again, is we're going to invest in medical research, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, the things, industries of the future, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotech, and we're going to make real investments. China is out investing us by a long shot because their plan is to own the future. So in this case, Joe Biden talks about planning for the future, seeing down the road, making investments, looking beyond today, looking beyond a year. Now, let's go to his actual quote from the news conference when asked about running for a second term. Mr. Big Respecter of Fate. He was asked a question by a reporter. You made big news recently that you announced you're going to be running for re-election in 2024. His quote, "That is my expectation." Quote, "I'm a great respect," this is Joe Biden, "I'm a great respecter of fate. I've never been able to plan 4.5, 3.5 years ahead for certain. I've never been able to plan 4.5, 3.5 years ahead for certain." Then he made some offhand comment about, "Oh, come on, I don't even think about, I have no idea. I have no idea whether there will be a Republican Party in 3.5, 4 years. Do you?" Yet over here, he's talking about planning decades ahead in dealing with the Chinese. So which is it? Which is it? And here's another link to this. Biden says U.S., quote unquote, must own the future in rivalry with China. But yet here he says he's never been able to plan 4.5 or 3.5 years ahead. The Chinese are planning 50 years ahead. And he said, quote, his words, he's never been able to plan. He didn't say plan for re-election. He didn't be able to say plan meals. He said plan, period. And I'll give you the links to all of this. This is why they didn't want him in front of cameras. Because this is a truth that I'm sure a lot of my audience can relate to. As people get older, they lose their filters. They become less political. I mean, they still have their political beliefs, but they worry less about the perception of what they say. And it's true. They also lose the ability to think long-term down the road. People do a much better job of that when they're in their late 30s, 40s, middle age. You start to think about things. People in their 20s don't really think about retirement. You don't really start thinking about it till you start to get older. But when you get to be a certain age and beyond a certain age, they live in the moment. And in some cases that can be good, but in this particular case, it's terrible. Because you can't have the leader of a country coming out in his first planned press conference making a statement like, I've never been able to plan 4.5, 3.5 years in the future. That says something very specific about him. It gives China a huge insight into who they're dealing with. If he's never been able to do that, clearly he's never attempted to plan 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So when he says 120 years ago when I came in the Senate, I wonder if he does that as a default go-to because he has a hard time remembering how long he has actually been in the Senate or was in the Senate. I mean, remembering that one specific year. And of course, how long ago that would be changing every year. So he just defaults to 120 years. So that he can seem like he's jovial and laughing it off and self-deprecating about his age. That sounds like something that might have been coached to him to do. It's like, look, if you're having a problem remembering, what year it was, what year we're in now versus what year you're trying to remember, just default to this 120 years thing. It'll make people laugh, and of course they're not going to hold you to account because you're a liberal. Biden says U.S. must own the future in rivalry. Yet he doesn't have the ability, of his own admission, fact-checked, quoted, his own admission, his own statement, never having been able to plan for the future. China is out investing us by a long shot because their plan is to own that future. That's his quote. Also. And nobody, not talk radio, not the mainstream media, not Fox, nobody caught this. See, they caught the statement because everybody wants to follow, it's going to be Kamala, it's going to be Kamala, it's going to be Kamala. I doubt he even knows. I doubt he even knows. And truthfully, neither can you. Neither can anyone. But not being able to plan, that's a different thing. No one's saying he's supposed to have a crystal ball, and that's why I use this. And know exactly what the future holds, but you have to be able to plan for all different outcomes, likely outcomes, and eventualities, even in your own life, much less as president. Much less as president. Absolutely a stunning, stunning statement. So, anyway, I will leave this there because it's just, it's bizarre. For lack of a better term, it's bizarre that nobody critically has looked at that statement and said, is that a security risk? Seriously, is that a security risk? Because if you've never been able to plan, like he said, it's not that I'm not able to plan now because I'm older or I don't try to plan because I think planning is, something that isn't going to work. There is the old military statement about planning is necessary, but plans usually never survive first contact with the enemy. That's true, but saying that you've never been able to plan for not 30 years in the future, not 40, he said 4.5, 3.5 years. How in the world can you operate like that? How would anybody follow a leader who would say that? I wouldn't. And the world, especially our enemies, would never fear a leader that didn't have the ability to plan chess moves out 10, 12, 15 moves ahead. Anyway, have a great weekend, guys. I know those of you following me on Twitch, by the way, I haven't been on a couple nights. Got kind of a house project going on. But hopefully, Lord willing, be back on there tonight. Thank you for your patience. I very much appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. We will see you next time.